Hi there. Are you interested in finding out more about imposter syndrome? What it does to you, what it stops you doing? Well, if so, you're in the right place. I'm Jane Phillips, and I am a business coach who specializes in imposter syndrome. So I work with business owners and professionals to help them overcome their imposter syndrome so that they can be bold and brave, be courageous and make those decisions, grab those new chances and opportunities, and essentially to earn more money, which sounds really good, doesn't it? That sounds really great. So every week I run these imposter syndrome Q&As, Wednesdays at 12:30. So thank you for joining me today. If you're there, if you're listening, pop something in the comments for me. It'd be really great to know that you're there and listening, because with LinkedIn Live, you're never quite sure with StreamYard. Last week I had massive technical difficulties, as some of you will know. So this week I'm hoping it's all going to plan. So if you are there, if you're listening, please pop a comment for me so I can see. If you're watching this on the replay, then just put #replay so that I know that you're watching it as well. So welcome everybody. So I'm going to chat for the next sort of 20 minutes, something like that, about imposter syndrome. If you've got any questions at all, pop them in the comments and I will aim to answer them. What I will also do is answer some of the questions that I've received from people in the week about imposter syndrome. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can see we're live, so that's really good. Thank you for that comment. So can't see who exactly it is. It says, "Hi Jane, I'm here. Glad to see you running these lives on such an important topic." So for some reason, StreamYard can be a bit odd. Can't actually see your name. It seems to do that when I go on other people's LinkedIn lives. But thank you for joining me. So imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is that, it's when you get that voice in your head that tells you that you're not good enough, that everybody else knows more than you do, that really stops you from sort of taking on those challenges, and makes you feel really sort of insecure. It makes you question yourself. It makes you question your ability. And even though other people will say to you, you've done a really good job, you just don't believe it. And let's face it, when you feel like that, you're not going to want to take on new challenges. You're not going to want to put your hand up and go for different opportunities. Hi there, Jennifer. Lovely to see you. Thank you. So it's you. That's great. Great to see you here. You're not going to want to be brave and go for those opportunities. So it is really important that you find a way of recognizing your imposter syndrome and being able to manage it, because the reality is that, we all experience imposter syndrome. And even though you might learn to manage your imposter syndrome, there still will be times when you feel a little bit insecure. So having some tools in your toolbox to do that is really, really useful and important. So I'm just looking at some of the questions that I've had. I've had a really good question here, which is imposter syndrome affected by caffeine? It's a really, really interesting question, because when we feel imposter syndrome, it makes us avoid things. It stops us from putting our hand up. It makes us procrastinate. And unless we're able to overcome our imposter syndrome, it really does put us in quite an uncomfortable place, quite a bad place. We're not going to be feeling, we're not going to be feeling happy. We're not going to be feeling confident. We're not going to be feeling at our best. And we also know that caffeine can affect our blood sugar and will affect our sort of ups and downs. That you have your caffeine and you have that boost. But what happens, of course, is that you have a dip with caffeine as well. And if you're hitting that dip and you are feeling imposter syndrome, if imposter syndrome is there and questioning you, then without a doubt, the caffeine will be adding to that. It's going to amplify the way you're feeling about yourself. So, on a nutritional side, I would always say to, try and keep your blood sugar level, and don't have those caffeine peaks and troughs during the day. So, yeah, really interesting question coming from a completely different angle. But absolutely, what we do, what we eat, what we drink can affect how we're feeling about ourselves, as can other situations. So, if you've had a bad day, first of all, the tech goes wrong, for instance, then you have a really difficult conversation, maybe with a client, and you might be questioning yourself. You might be questioning your ability to do something well. So, if then the third problem comes along, then you're going to be more likely to be questioning yourself. So, one of the things that I think is really useful is to keep a log, keep a record. I have a folder on my computer where I can go and look at all the nice comments that people have said about me, whether it's clients, whether it's co-workers, whether it's previous managers who have just sent an email saying, Jane, that was really brilliant. So I can look back at them, because we're not very kind to ourselves, are we? We really dismiss the good things that are said to us. We don't stop and enjoy that. So I have the folders that I use, that I go and look at, and I just use that, just sit there and read the comments and really let them soak in. Because the other thing that we do is that we rush over the good experiences that we have. If we do something really well and we're pleased about it, we'll sort of say, oh yeah, that was really good, right, what's the next thing? And we don't give ourselves time to stop and absorb that feeling of success. And it's nothing to do with being big-headed or bragging. It's just about recognizing and acknowledging that you've done a good job. One of the things that I say to my clients is, at the end of the day, and it's not so much about a gratefulness, it's not about writing about what you're being grateful for, but it's about concentrating on the things that have gone well, the things that you are pleased with today. And it could be something really small. It doesn't have to be major, it doesn't have to be mega, but something where you think, oh yeah, I did that well. And just think about that before you go to sleep, and absorb that. Just really remember the situation, remember how you felt, remember what was said to you, remember it in as much detail as you can, and really absorb that. The more you do that, the stronger, the more powerful your positive self-belief will be, and it'll also help to shut that negative voice up that we have, because you'll have more of a positive voice going on, because you're going to be feeling a lot better about yourself. I'm just going to bring this comment up here onto the screen. Great tip, Jane. I only have 1 coffee a day max, and now tend to drink decaf. I know that too much coffee has given my husband palpitations, so everything in moderation. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I've reduced my caffeine intake, and I must admit, I didn't have problems sleeping, so it wasn't stopping me from sleeping. But just from a sort of a health point of view, I thought, yeah, I'm going to cut that down, and I do feel much better for it during the day. I really do. So now I'm a Red Bush girl for my tea and a decaf girl for my coffee. I still do occasionally have, a full force coffee, as I like to call it. So that's really good. Thank you. Thanks for that, Jennifer. Another question that came to me this week was somebody asking me, can imposter syndrome ever be a good thing? Well, I think that there are 2 sort of fields of thought about this. So I think that there are people who believe that imposter syndrome is a good thing because it makes them work harder, because it makes them sort of check what they're doing. And also, people think it's a good thing because it keeps us safe. There are other people who believe that imposter syndrome is always bad, that is never ever a good thing. Um, and I think that I have a different view. I think that we all have imposter syndrome. It is part of our personality. We all have our inner voices, different inner voices within us, and it's one of those. It's there, and it will always be there, and it will always question us. But it's what we do about that that makes the difference. If we allow it to take control and allow it to stop us from doing what we want to do, then imposter syndrome is undoubtedly a bad thing. But those inner voices in our heads, they are always trying to protect us in some way. And imposter syndrome is one of those. So, typical situation, you're doing something brand new. Let's say first time I was going to do a LinkedIn Live, was really worried about it, hadn't done it before, wasn't sure about the tech, and so you worry, don't you? You worry, can I do this? Am I good enough to do this? Am I going to be able to use the different buttons and the different ways that people can view me? Can I set it up properly? You've got all of that sort of self-doubt. And it can be really tempting to say, what, there's just too much going on. It's too hard. I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm in the stretch zone, and I'm really not happy there. And not do it. But what I choose to do, and it is a choice, I choose to remember the last time I did something like this. So, for instance, when I was interviewed, when I was on the receiving end, and how well that had gone, and how good the interviewer was, and how much I enjoyed it, in fact. And by remembering a positive experience, by seeing that I have been able to overcome complications in the past, and also knowing who I can pick up the phone to or get on Zoom with to pick their brains, is really, really important as well. So knowing that you've done a good job in the past, knowing that you've overcome challenges, knowing that you have somebody that you can ask for help, really makes a massive difference. And it's that builds your self-belief and builds your confidence and makes you feel, yeah, I think I will have a go. I think I will do this. I can do this. I know my finger is hovering over the go live button, but you know what? I'm going to do this. That's really, really useful. And there's the other thing about worrying about doing something with imposter syndrome telling you that you can't do something. It's often fear. It's telling you don't do that. Don't take that opportunity, because you might look silly. It might go wrong. This might happen. For instance, you might be going, let's say, on a different journey, and so you have to perhaps, now I've got a better example. Traveling abroad. Let's say you have to travel abroad and you don't really speak the language. You've got a few words, and you're really worried whether or not you're going to be able to do that. And there's something about our feelings, whether they are fact or whether they're fiction. And often when we worry about something, when we worry that people are not going to be able to understand us, for instance, when we worry, we have to think about, is that really going to happen? So how likely is that is going to be a reality? And so, one of the things things is that, sorry, I can hear my computer beeping in the background. So for instance, what's the chances that I speak to somebody in France and I can't ask them what I need to ask them if I was traveling through France, going on a journey? Well, if I didn't, perhaps I can use some hand signs to help me, or maybe there's somebody else who could speak some English and help, or that person that I ask might be able to speak some English, or I could probably find someone else to help me. So even though I think that the worst might happen, that I might speak to somebody, ask them a question, they haven't got a clue what I want, what I need, and therefore I end up not having a clue where I'm going, completely lost, not knowing anybody, to speak to. The reality is that that's not going to happen. Somebody will be able to help me. So there's an example of when you worry too much and you think something might happen, but in reality, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So, so it's important to just think it through. I'm worried that X will happen. Well, will it really happen? Because often fear is not a fact. Fear is just a feeling, and it's just fiction, and it won't actually happen. So yeah, I think that's really, really important, that you feel that fear, acknowledge that fear, but then know that there's ways that you can overcome it and go ahead and do it anyway. So yeah, so that's my the second question that I've had this week, and I think we've just got time for one more question. And actually, I did talk about this one last week, but we had such tech difficulties that you might not have seen it. So it was whether imposter syndrome is a manufactured term, whether it's just being created for a bit of marketing purposes so that coaches can get clients. Is it just something that's been made up, a created term? Well, the background to imposter syndrome is that it was identified by two doctors, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes. I think I'm saying that properly. And they were working with some PhD students in Georgia State University, and this was back in 1978. And with the conversations that they were having with their students, they realized that the students didn't think that they were good enough to be doing the PhD that they were doing. Now, it did so happen that the study they were doing was all with females, but more recent studies have shown that actually men suffer from imposter syndrome as much as women. And anyway, so Pauline and Suzanne coined the term imposter syndrome because that's what the students were saying to them. They were saying, I just don't feel like I should be here. I don't feel like I fit in. I don't feel I'm good enough to be doing this PhD. And I can't believe the comments that the professors are giving me. The professors are giving my work. So, so as you can see, it actually came from a real case study. They were not looking to create something. They were not trying to manufacture a term so that they could create things. Absolutely not. So it really is a real term. It really does affect people. And in actual fact, when I talk to some of my friends that perhaps I haven't seen them for a little while, and they say, well, what are you doing now, Jane? And I'll say, I help people to overcome their imposter syndrome. And they say, what's that? Because they haven't heard the term. And when I explain it to them, they say, that's me. That's me. That's absolutely me. I feel exactly like that. So many people say that. So even people who've never heard the term identify with the feelings that people have. So for me, yeah, Absolutely. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, and it's not a manufactured term just for marketing purposes. So I hope that's been really useful for you today. It's been really good to talk to you. And thank you for all the comments that I've seen. It's really good to know that you're here. So I will be here next week again at 12:30 on Wednesday, doing another Q&A LinkedIn Live. If you want any support in the meantime, you can talk to me and I can work on a one-to-one basis with you. And also, I have an imposter syndrome course that people are really getting some incredible results from. So if you'd like to know more about that, please do get in touch. So it's great to see you today, and hopefully I will see you next week. Keep in touch. Bye.